Damn it, Janet, Website Planet. It has a lawsuit in the making. Hi, I'm Ezekiel Bruni, writer for Website Planet and web designer, mostly for fun these days. Today, I've got a checklist for you. We call it the Webmaster's Checklist. It's a list of 30 things that you want to do, ideally before you actually launch your website. Though, not necessarily. Most of this can also be done after, if you've already launched it. Before we jump right into that, I want to give you a couple of notes. One, Webmaster. If you're not like me and you're not barreling into your 30s with the grace and determination of a cube-shaped cannonball, then you should know that Webmaster is a catch-all term that we used to use for basically anybody who builds and maintains websites, anybody who's in charge of running a website. It's an older term, but it's one I still like, so that's why we used it for the article that this video is based on. And let's see now. Yes, a lot of the advice will be based on WordPress, but most of the tips will be usable for any site at all. And while 30 tips may seem like a lot, you don't need to do everything at once. Take it slow. Most of this should be done during the building of the website, but even if you've already got a site launched, take it slow. You could dedicate a single day to each one of these tips and improve your website in a month, or you might just take a couple a week. See how it goes. And lastly, we have a lot of links to different resources in the article and in the link and in the description of this video. So, if you want to stay hydrated, take a sip of water, municipally sourced, every time I say link in the description. It's a good thing this is actually just water. All right, so without further ado or delay, I'm going to jump right into the checklist. 1. You want to make sure your domains are all working right. So you may have directed your domain right to your host yourself, or your web hosting provider, if you bought a domain with them, should have set that up for you. But you want to make sure everything works right. Now, when you go to your domain, say yoursite.com, that should work fine every time. But you want to make sure things like subdomains, these things, things like blog.yoursite.com, you want to make sure they're working correctly because, well, if they don't, you can lose access to things like your site's email, or you can lose access to things like your site's FTP transfers. Different web hosts use subdomains for all sorts of critical functions, so make sure they work correctly. That's all. 2. Configure and test your domain email addresses. So here's the thing. Most web hosts will allow you to set up email accounts on your website, on your domain. So if your website is, for example, pleasenottheclowns.com, you could set up an email address at info@pleasenottheclowns.com. I forgot I made that. But yeah, basically it's good to have a branded email address like that, one with your domain on it, because it's great for looking more professional online. And to test those email addresses to make sure they're working after you've made them, just send some email to yourself. That's literally it. Mind you, actually getting those email addresses configured and set up will vary from host to host, and then you'll need to use an email client to access them, whether that's an online email client or a desktop-based email client like Outlook or Thunderbird. And the process for setting your email to work with those clients will vary from host to host, so I can't tell you here just how to do that. So just look for your host's instructions on those particular things. 3. Test your host's performance. Okay, so one thing we do every time we review a new host is we run a couple of tests on it. You can see the results of some of those tests up there. We use GTmetrix, for example, to test complete page load times. And we use Uptime Robot to see how steady the servers are, to see how well the site just stays up, to see how many shortages and outages they have. We used to use Sakuri to test international load times, but there has been something going on with them. Don't touch that one. But basically, GTmetrix uses PageSpeed Insights and YSlow to test everything about how your site loads and how fast it loads. And it can actually tell you where lots of problems are. And if you don't know how to fix those problems, well, then maybe you can hire a professional to fix them for you, help you optimize images, minimize your code, all that stuff, all things we will be talking about in the near future in this video. 4. Define your content's most important keywords. So, yeah. Ideally, this is something that would have been done before. This would have been necessarily, in an ideal world, this is going to be done before you even build your website at all. In theory, you should have all the content and all the text you need for your website before you touch a graphical application or any code. But if you don't, if that didn't happen, it's never too late to put in the right keywords. But mostly for the keywords, you can research them, but mostly just use your common sense. If you're selling a digital camera, a budget one, for example, you might want to use words like camera, photography, digital, megapixels. Sprinkle those out throughout your content. Obviously, you want to do that in a way that feels natural, as natural as possible. If you're targeting bird watchers, then you make sure to actually mention birds in your marketing. That's really all you need to do. Mind you, if you want to actually research the keywords, there are 2 tools we recommend: Answer the Public and SEMrush. You can find links to our reviews of both of these tools in the description. 5. Install an SSL certificate. So the short version is SSL is a layer of security that's designed to protect all websites and users of websites. And it does this by encrypting the traffic that goes from your server to the user and vice versa. And in order to activate this, you need a signed SSL certificate. Don't ask me how that all works. I still actually haven't figured it out myself. But the important thing is the programmers figured it out. And the best web hosts, and we do have a list of those, link in the description. The best web hosts will make SSL available to you on every plan for free. And some will even have certificates installed on your hosting account by default, so that you don't have to worry about this thing. But you just want to check and make sure it's there. You want to make sure that your hosting has SSL. One easy way to check is to look in the address bar in your browser, the little lock icon. That it will, if it's there, that means your site is secure and is using SSL and encrypting all the traffic. Don't put it off. Just don't put this off. We also have a handy SSL checker available, and it can also remind you to renew your SSL certificates if they don't renew automatically. So be sure to check that below, link in the description. 6. Enable an anti-spam solution. So this is especially necessary for websites that use a content management system like WordPress or Joomla or Drupal or what have you. And you'll actually need to protect yourself on 2 fronts. You will need a spam protection system for your website emails. Now that's going to be on the back end. That's something your hosting has to provide. But basically, you'll definitely want a spam filter because you will be getting spam at your business email. It just happens. But the other front you need to protect yourself on is in comments, naturally. For comment sections, WordPress actually has an anti-spam plugin by default, in case you didn't know, in case everyone didn't already know. It's called Akismet, and it's actually one of the best anti-spam services out there. And you can mostly use it for free. So, go for it. Now, no spam filter is actually perfect, keep that in mind, but Akismet does work pretty well, and it's free, so go for it. 7. Install an under construction plugin and or build in a staging environment. Alright, so these are actually sort of 2 highly related tips, all in under one heading. But basically, you'll want an under construction plugin if your site isn't ready yet, or just an under construction page. I say plugin because WordPress and other content management systems allow you to just quickly put up an under construction page that will even take people's email addresses if you want to collect them for your newsletter or something like that. But basically, make sure people know that your site isn't finished yet, so they're not expecting a full and complete experience. Now, once your site is actually launched, some hosts like Scala Hosting and Liquid Web will allow you, pretty much any host with Softaculous app installer really, will allow you to create a copy of your website that you can work on separately. And once you've made all the changes you want, you can merge the changes into your main website. And it happens all automatically, and it's a way to work on your site without it ever looking unfinished, and without, ever having your site be in that sort of transitory state. There's also WordPress plugin or 2 or 5 that can do a similar thing, create a staging environment for you to use. They can be a little more complex to use at times. Some of them are quite simple, some of them not so much. And if you're already testing your website and you don't have content for it, may I recommend using a lorem ipsum generator. Link to that in the description. It's good to have some dummy text to fill stuff out. Ideally, again, I'm going to say it, you want to have the actual content you'll be putting on the site when you're designing. That is the best way to do it. But if you need some dummy text, we've got you covered. 8. Configure local and remote backups. So yeah, this is literally just me telling you, back up your website. But make sure you've always got multiple options for backing up your website, if you can. Local backups, it can refer to two things. It can refer to backups that you have on your server itself. So if your site breaks, but your server's still fine, you can just restore your site right away. Those are quick and easy, relatively speaking. There's also the local backup, which is where you download backups of your website onto your own computer. That can be a good idea. Usually has to be done manually. And then there's remote backups, where your backups are stored on like a third-party server, entirely separate from your hosting server. This is just like an extra layer of redundancy to make sure if anything happens to your local web host servers and your own computer, you've still got another backup somewhere else. And if your host allows for automatic backups, you want them. You want automatic backups as much as possible, because you don't want to be thinking constantly, okay, I got to do the backup myself. I mean, it's a good idea to do manual backups now and then, but you don't want it to be something you absolutely have to do. It's better if it's automatic. 9. Install a security suite. So this tip really is semi-optional and applies mostly to sites based on a content management system like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, etc. WordPress is already okay at security if you're careful, and it is constantly receiving updates to improve site safety. Incidentally, you want to turn on automatic updates in WordPress, because that's a thing now, and you absolutely should do that. If your host hasn't already turned on automatic updates for your CMS, you want that. Okay, moving on. My point is that some improperly coded plugins and themes can introduce vulnerabilities into WordPress. So you want to use a security plugin that basically closes up all the various loopholes and potential problems. We actually do have a guide to the best security plugins on Website Planet, so link in the description. 10. Configure site information and permalinks. So this is another tip that's a bit more WordPress and CMS oriented. Basically, when you first set up your site, you need to remember to put in things like the actual name of your site, the slogan you want to use, all that sort of all those branding settings that come with just about every CMS these days. And you should also absolutely set up permalinks. Now, the thing about a CMS like WordPress is that sometimes by default, they'll use links that go something like yoursite.com/?/ huge number of random characters and letters. You don't want that. You want them to look more like yoursite.com/my-favorite-Futurama characters. That's something like that. It's there's different styles, different kinds of permalinks. Sometimes you can include the date something was posted. That's useful for blogs and things like that. But you just need to decide what kind of permalinks you want, and you need to set that up immediately, because changing link settings later on, that can hurt your search engine optimization. So 11, make sure your site design is cohesive. So basically, you want to make sure everything looks like it matches. All the colors, all the typography. If you've built your site yourself, or if you had a professional build your site, this shouldn't be too much of an issue. But if you're using WordPress and a theme with some different plugins, or a Wix template with some different add-ons and apps, things can get a little mismatched and jumbled. So you want to take the time to go through, edit all the styling, and make sure everything matches as consistently as possible. Another detail to look out for is that you want to make sure your fave icon is correct for your site. Now, your fave icon is the little icon in the upper left corner of browser tabs in browser windows. We actually have a fave icon generator that you can run your logo through to generate the image you need for that. And the link will be in the description. 12. Optimize your images. So images, JPEGs, PNGs, all of those in their, when they've just been made, can be a little big, uncompressed, unoptimized, and that can seriously hurt your site in terms of loading speed and bandwidth. And the solution is pretty simple. You just run them through an image compression software. We have one linked in the description. And you just need to make sure you run all of your images through that optimizer, that compression tool, before you upload them to your site. Make it a habit. And, just make sure you do it every time, and it'll save you so much time down the road and money. It'll save you money. There are WordPress plugins that can optimize images for you every time you upload a new image, but the best ones cost money. The tool linked down in the description, I'm not drinking this time, is free. 13. Optimize your code. Well, even if you're not a programmer, there are things you can do to make sure your code isn't so big and bulky. The very least you can do is run your JavaScript and CSS code through what's called a minifier. We have one available for you. Link in the description. And all this does really is remove all the unnecessary spaces from your code. It saves precious disk space, helps your site load faster, saves you bandwidth, saves you money. There are also WordPress plugins that can do this for you. However, if you don't plan to make changes to your site very often, or if you're running a site that doesn't use a content management system, then the minifier tool linked in the description will do exactly what you need. 14. Minimize tracking code. Okay, so this is for all you marketers out there. Oh boy, I might catch flack for that. Basically, you should be keeping an eye on all the various code that you use to track your users, whether it's Google Analytics or heat maps code or social media tracking apps. All of these things can slow down your site. Mostly this tracking code is usually run on JavaScript, and JavaScript can do more than most other kinds of code to affect how your site loads. It can slow things down. Sometimes JavaScript just breaks and it keeps the rest of the page from loading. I'm not going to get into that. That's another hill to die on. But the point is, double check the performance of your site every time you install a new theme or plugin. Some of them will throw extra tracking code into your site. You want to keep an eye on that. 15. Make sure all your content looks just right. You might spend a dozen hours getting the homepage to look exactly how you want it. Curate every step of the process of purchasing goods. And that's all right, good, right? You can just copy and paste the rest of the text into its respective pages. Nah, you want to double check everything. You want to double check every single page you work on. If for no other reason than that copying text from, say, Microsoft Word or LibreOffice can leave formatting errors in the text, when you copy text from one rich text editor to another, it can leave artifacts and problems and secret formatting. And sometimes the computer gods are just feeling peevish, and something that looked right yesterday doesn't look right today. So double check all of your content. That's the only way to avoid silly-looking mistakes at launch. Well, we're around the halfway mark of the video now, so I'm just going to give you the old please like and subscribe. If you feel that this video and the content in our channel has been useful to you, please go ahead, give this video a like, hit the subscribe button for more, and it would really help us out. All right, moving on. 16, install an accessibility plugin. So, yeah. Ideally, again, your site will have been designed in such a way to make it accessible to people with visual impairments, motor skill issues, anyone who doesn't have 20/20 vision. Sometimes you might even need features for the hard of hearing, like subtitles and transcriptions for videos and audio. So ideally, you'll have all of that, because you're leaving money on the table if people come to your site and can't use it and then just go to someone else's. First, you can start by checking out our guide on website accessibility made easy, link in the description. And as an extra step, you can install a plugin for WordPress or your content management system of choice that will add tools to the front end of your website that can allow people to customize the way the site looks and works a little bit to make it more accessible for them. These plugins will do things like give your site more visual contrast, or bigger text, read your text out loud via text-to-speech, all sorts of things like that. A couple of plugins we recommend include WP Accessibility Helper, Accessibility Widget, and text-to-speech PHP/JS script converter. Now, those first two will do the things I mentioned about adding accessibility options to the front end of your site to make things more visually appealing. And the last one does pretty much what it says. 17, check for mobile, tablet, and desktop compatibility. Again, ideally, you'll have mobile compatibility and mobile readiness baked into your website's design. But maybe you're using a brand new WordPress theme, or maybe you're working with a new designer and you want to double check things. That's fine. The best way to make sure your site is mobile ready is to use as many mobile devices as you can. Just grab your friend's phone, grab your friend's tablet if it's a different model from yours. If it's an Android or an Apple and you don't have one of those, just borrow as many of these devices as you can here and there and check your website on those devices. Make sure it looks and works right. Now, there are a couple of things you can do to check the mobile readiness of a website without borrowing other people's devices. There is a responsiveness checker tool that we will link in the description that you can use to check your website. And as an additional note, need to do this. As an additional note, if you've chosen to build your website with Google's AMP technology, that's accelerated mobile pages for everyone else, if you've decided to use that, and that's another rant for another day, there's also an AMP validator tool, link in the description, to make sure that you've built your AMP pages right. 18, check for browser compatibility. So this tip is a corollary to the last one, essentially. Check every browser you can. Check Firefox, check Chrome, check Microsoft Edge, Opera. Every browser that you can think of, check your website in it. And even though a lot of browsers these days are built on the same technology, that including Chrome, Opera, Vivaldi, even though a lot of them use basically the same engine on the back end, they're all different versions of the browser rendering engine. In other words, just check every browser you can to make sure your website looks and works as you expect. 19, install an SEO plugin and get ready for Google. So, back to some WordPress advice here. In theory, the best search engine optimization is writing good content. That's the bulk of the work right there. but it helps if you tell Google and other search engines exactly what kind of content they're looking at. WordPress isn't super good at that by default. Some different content management systems have problems with this sometimes, and that's where search engine optimization plugins, SEO plugins, come in. The most popular one at the moment is Yoast, link in the description, which basically gives you a way to change how search engines will see and interpret every post and page on your site and tell them what kind of content they'll be looking at. You also could use a WordPress plugin to generate a sitemap file, which is a file that tells search engines where all of your content is. It lists all of your public pages and blog posts and says, this is where you find that. Though you don't really need to install a plugin anymore on WordPress, because as of version 5.5, WordPress does this on its own. 20. Test your XML sitemap and your Robots.txt file. So, staying on the search engine optimization theme, there are a couple more tools you should know about. I talked a second ago about the sitemap file. There's a sitemap XML sitemap validator, linked in the description below, that will check your website to make sure that the file in question is present and configured and working properly. Another file you want to keep in mind is the Robots.txt file, which also sits on your hosting server and basically is not nearly as awesome as it sounds because it has nothing to do with actual robots. It's all about the little bots that search engines use to check your website, to read all the content and decide how it should be ranked. And your Robots.txt file is used to decide, okay, the search engine, you can check out these files. These are the public files, but you shouldn't check out these other files. These are not public. These are not just to be indexed by the search engine. Mind you, the Robots.txt file is only considered like a guideline. Search engines will not automatically stop indexing, files you've marked as private. They'll do what they want, but but having a Robots.txt file can help Google decide what parts of your content, what parts of your site are relevant. And however, if you have a badly configured Robots.txt file, it can cause potential server problems and hurt your search engine rankings. So to prevent this, there's a Robots.txt file checker linked in the description that you should totally give a look at. Have a look at. 21. Manual testing and tryouts. Now you got to get your hands dirty. Literally test every part of your site. And I mean, open every page, go through every link, open a whole bunch of pages, open 200 tabs, test your contact form, test your purchasing forms. Have your friends look. Tell your most, grammar-obsessed friends to go and look for typos. Check everything. Make sure it all works as expected. 22. Test for connected services behavior. Staying on that theme, it's easy these days to integrate your site with third-party services to add comments, for example, from Facebook or Discuss. Or you might use a service like Zapier to set off 5 alarms in a Rube Goldberg machine every time someone clicks a button like buy now or what have you. So you want to make sure you test these interactions a lot. Test them, refresh the page 50 times, make sure the comments always load. Because these third-party integrations can be tricky, because they're usually based on JavaScript code and the like. And so if things go even a little bit wrong when loading your site, sometimes those features can break down. 23. Run even more performance tests. So this is about your web host more than anything else. Remember how I told you before to test your host's performance at the beginning? Well, that's that's ideally done before you build your website. But once your website is built, once you've got everything working, once you've got all your third-party integrations up and your large images up, You want to make sure your site works fast. You want to test your whole site properly. So run the GTmetrix tests again on your completed website and make sure you have gzip compression. Basically what that does is it compresses all the data that users ask for from your site. So, they load up a web page, the server compresses it like a zip file, sends it to the user, and it gets uncompressed on the other end, and then the user sees it. That can save you a lot of bandwidth. It can save your users a lot of bandwidth. There's a gzip compression checker. Run it on your site. If you don't have gzip enabled, go enable it or ask your developer or designer to enable it for you. Link in the description. 24. Cleanup. So at this point in the process, you've probably had installed some plugins that it turns out you're not going to use. Installed some themes that you've decided just don't work right for your business. Basically, clean your room. Did you find all the trash lying around your website or your WordPress installation? Find everything that's on your server that you're not actually going to use and take it off your server. Delete that. 25. Install a caching plugin. Okay, so this performance tip is about caching. WordPress stores all of its information, and WordPress and other content management systems like it store all of their information in a database. And when a user comes to visit your website, this WordPress has to call up that information from the database and then populate the page with content. This takes a second, and it can slow down your site, the actual loading time. And if you've got thousands of users calling up the same content over and over and over again, it can put some wear and tear on your server, and it can seriously reduce your site's performance. So enter a caching plugin. Basically what these do is they create a copy of your website's content, put it somewhere temporary, and when users come to your site, they see the cached content, which loads much faster and is easier on the server. The cached content is set to expire. So example, for a blog, you can set your content to the cache to expire every 24 hours so that it'll be refreshed every 24 hours so that users will always see your newest daily blog post, for example. This is better. Caching is better for sites that don't update a ton, like not every 5 minutes. And we recommend plugins like W3 Total Cache or WP Super Cache, just so you know. 26. Activate a content delivery network service. So a CDN or content delivery network does pretty much the same thing as a caching plugin, but different. So a content delivery network has servers all over the world. Just tons and tons of servers. And when you sign up for a CDN, it will copy your website to all those servers all over the world, so that when local users try to go to your website, they will get data from the closest server to them, meaning it's going to load a lot faster. And basically, if you run an international site, you absolutely need one of these. Some hosts like SiteGround make it easy to set up a content delivery network in just a few clicks. But even if you're on a host that doesn't have a content delivery network, you want to look into these if you're running an international site. 27. Integrate Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, and any other services like heat spot mapping. All right, so you want to know how people are using your site. That's fine. You want to know which pages they find most useful. You want to know what parts of your site almost never get visited. If you have, an e-commerce setup, a shopping cart, you want to know at what part of the buying process people are most likely to simply go do other things, live their lives. Well, there's always Google Analytics, of course, that can help you with these things, and there are more privacy-focused analytics platforms like Matomo or Plausible. So, yeah, go ahead and integrate those. But again, run your performance tests after you've integrated these, because some analytics platforms can actually slow down your site a lot. And you don't want to use too many different analytics platforms for the same reason. Too much tracking code, as previously mentioned, can seriously slow down your site. 28. continually improve your website's SEO. So, installing an SEO plugin isn't enough to actually get your site ranked highly on Google and whatnot. You need to continually use the right keywords in your content and in your meta tags. You need to find other sites and have them link back to you to help establish trust in the eyes of search engines and algorithms. You'll need to promote your own site and your content via social media, which can send a lot of organic traffic to your site and increase your general visibility with search engines. You'll need to keep your site updated. You'll need to do all of that stuff. The only real question is whether or not you want to do it all yourself. While good search engine optimization isn't insanely complicated, it can be very time-consuming. If you want to continually update your site but also run like the rest of your business on the side, it might be worth hiring someone to help you keep your site relevant and fresh and, search engine friendly. You can hire someone to do this for as little as $5 on Fiverr, link in the description. But it's also good to have if you have a bigger company, it's also good to have someone in-house doing this. 29. Regular maintenance. So this isn't just about SEO. Sites need updating, not just for technical reasons. So if you're running a site on something like WordPress, you want to make sure WordPress is constantly updated. You want to make sure you're already using the right plugins. And sometimes when you update plugins and themes, you want, they can make something crash. So you'll need to double check all of that. You'll need to maintain all of that. Best idea is to go back to a previous tip here, to do all of your updates in a staging environment first to make sure nothing's breaking your site, and then update your actual main website. But basically, make sure you're never using older versions of software, because the older something is, like older versions of WordPress have more security flaws that hadn't been detected yet when that software was first written. So, update. 30. The 1 year mark. We recommend purchasing hosting for a single year or no longer than that, because everything can change in a year, and the 1 year mark is a great time to check your website's status. Do you need to upgrade to a better hosting plan? To a virtual private server? Do you need a different host altogether with better features? Has your site stayed up reliably? Is it time for your site's design to get refreshed and renewed and updated? Basically, these are all the questions you want to be asking yourself around the 1 year mark, more or less. Sorry, bumped the microphone. But basically, always look to see what can be improved. Abandoned websites aren't doing you any good. They're just costing you money. So around the 1 year mark, you want to sit back, take a good hard look at your website, ask, is it doing everything I need it to do? Is it getting me the results I want? How could it be improved? Okay, so I hope everyone found those 30 tips useful and helpful. I hope, honestly, that you found this video, helped you out in making a better website. If you've implemented any of these tips, please go ahead and leave a comment. Tell us. Any feedback you could provide would be fantastic. If you feel this content has been worth your time, please do like and subscribe, and have a great day. This is Ezekiel Bruni signing out.